9. I was ordered to apologize to my own daughter before the entire Amish church the morning they called my name. The church benches were arranged in 2 long rows, the way they always were for a members' meeting. Men on one side, women on the other, the older ones nearest the front. I was 43 years old. I had sat in that room since I was a child, first beside my mother, then beside my husband, then alone after he passed. I knew every creak in those floorboards, every draft that came through the south-facing window in November. I thought I knew what it meant to belong to that room. Bishop Levi stood at the front with his hands folded and his voice at the low, unhurried register he used when a matter was serious. He did not look at me when he spoke my name. He looked at the floor just ahead of his boots, the way he always did when he was about to say something that could not be unsaid. "Ruth Byler," he said. "You are asked to come forward." I stood. My knees did not shake. That surprised me. I had been awake since 2 in the morning, lying in the dark, rehearsing what this moment would feel like. I had imagined trembling. Instead, I felt a strange, hollow stillness, as though some part of me had been expecting this my entire life without knowing it. Across the aisle in the second row on the women's side, my daughter Sarah sat with her hands folded in her lap and her eyes fixed on the window. She was 24 years old. She did not turn to look at me as I walked to the front. Bishop Levi said, "You are here to offer a right apology to your daughter, before this congregation, for the harm you caused her." The room was very quiet. Someone's baby shifted and murmured, and then was still. I looked at Sarah. She still did not look at me. To understand why I was standing there, why my own daughter would not meet my eyes, why the bishop had arranged this, and why some part of me believed, even in that moment, that I deserved it, I have to return to the winter Sarah was 7 years old. The year I made the first of many decisions I told myself were for her protection. I grew up in a district in eastern Ohio, in a community that had been established by my great-grandfather's generation. Families there had known one another for so long that the relationships had layers, old debts, old grievances, old alliances, that were rarely spoken of directly but shaped nearly everything. You learned to read silence the way you read weather. Certain stillness at the supper table meant something. A particular pause before an answer meant something else. My husband, Daniel Byler, was a quiet man, not cruel in any obvious way. He did not raise his voice or his hand. What he did instead was manage information. He decided what I needed to know, and what I did not, what concerns were worth troubling me with, and which ones he would handle without my involvement. He framed this as care. In the community where I grew up, a husband who handled things was considered a steady man. I was 21 when we married, and I believed that Sarah was our second child. Our son Eli was 3 years older. From the time Sarah could walk, she was a particular kind of child, watchful, precise, the sort who noticed when something in the room had changed before anyone else did. She would stand in a doorway and study the adults with those still gray eyes. Thea and I sometimes caught Daniel looking back at her with an expression I could not quite name. Not warmth, something more careful than that. The winter Sarah was 7. She came to me one afternoon while I was mending and told me that her Sunday school teacher, a woman named Edna Troyer, had asked her to stay behind after the other children left. "What did she want?" I asked. Sarah said that Edna had asked her questions about our house, about what happened in our house, about whether there were ever nights when Sarah stayed at the neighbor's farm, and whether she had stayed there this past autumn. She had. Sarah had spent 3 nights at the Zook farm in September, while I recovered from a difficult illness. I had been grateful for the help. I had not thought to wonder why Daniel arranged it so quickly, or why he chose the Zooks specifically, who lived farther away than 2 other families who would have been easier. I told Sarah I would speak to her teacher. I told her not to worry. I smoothed her hair and sent her to help her brother with the evening chores. And then I sat very still for a long time with the mending in my lap, because something about that conversation had settled in my chest like a stone, and I did not yet know its name. I spoke to Daniel that evening after the children were in bed. He listened to everything I said. Then he was quiet for a moment, the way he always was before he reframed something. He said that Edna Troyer was a woman who had caused problems in the district before, that she had taken an unhealthy interest in other families' private matters, that he had already spoken to one of the deacons about her, and that it would be handled. "What does that mean?" I asked. "Handled." "It means you don't need to concern yourself," he said. I should have pressed. I know that now. Instead, I folded the conversation the way I folded difficult things in those years. carefully edges matched, and set to side somewhere I would not have to look at it directly. Edna Troyer stopped teach Sunday school the following month. The reason given was that she had decided to step back and tend to her aging mother. I accepted that. I told myself I had no reason not to. What I did not know then, what I would not learn for another 11 years, was that Edna Troyer had not stepped back voluntarily. She had gone to the deacon with a specific concern about my daughter. About certain things Sarah had said during a lesson on honesty, things that suggested she had been told to keep secrets she did not understand. Edna had asked her careful questions, the kind a woman asks when she is trying to understand whether a child is safe. Daniel had been informed of Edna's concern before I was. He had gone to the deacon and to Bishop Levi's predecessor, a man named Reuben Schwartz, and he had presented Edna's interest as interference, a woman overstepping, reading darkness into ordinary family matters, troubling a child unnecessarily. He had been persuasive, he was always persuasive, and so the concern was set aside. Thee and Edna was quietly encouraged to withdraw, and I was told only that she had chosen to tend to her mother. The stone in my chest did not go away, but I learned to carry it without noticing the weight. The years that followed had their own pattern. Daniel managed the money, the decisions about the children's schooling, the relationships with our neighbors and the church. I managed the house, the children, the daily texture of family life. I was not unhappy in any clear, definable way. I was simply narrower than I had once expected to be. I had learned, without quite being taught, that the area of my authority ended at the edge of the kitchen garden. Sarah grew into a young woman who made me proud in ways I could not always say aloud. She had a mind that moved quickly. She asked questions her teachers found uncomfortable. She read everything she could find. By the time she was 15, there was a tension between her and her father that I understood but could not name, a tension I eased by becoming, without intending to, a kind of cushion between them. I softened her questions before they reached him. I translated his silences into something she could live with. I believed I was helping. I was not helping, I understand that now. When Sarah was 16, she came to me with a question about the autumn she had spent 3 nights at the Zook farm. She was old enough now to wonder. She said a girl at the Zook farm, a cousin her age, had told her something once and she had not understood it then, but she thought she did now. "Mama," she said, "why did I have to leave for those 3 nights? I told her I had been ill. I told her it was so I could rest without worrying about the children." She looked at me the way she had looked at rooms when she was small, studying, measuring, deciding whether what she saw was the whole picture. "That isn't all of it," she said. I told her it was. And I held that lie carefully between us, because I told myself that the truth, whatever the whole truth was, would hurt her more than the lie. I was wrong about that. A lie you accept from your mother does not protect you. It simply teaches you that you cannot trust the one person who should have told you the truth. By the time Sarah was 19, the distance between us had taken a shape. She was not cold, she loved me, I believe. But there was a particular kind of directness she used with me. A habit of watching my face when I answered her, looking for the place where my answer ended and the rest began. She had learned that skill from years of needing it. She was 20 when she told me she did not intend to be baptized in our district, that she wanted to take a year and consider whether she wanted to return. I was frightened. I begged her not to go. I told her she would lose her community, her family, her foundation. I told her she was making a decision she did not yet understand the cost of. She said very quietly, "I understand the cost of staying, Mama. I've been paying it for a long time." She left that spring. What happened while Sarah was gone is the part I have replayed the most, in the years since, trying to see where I failed the most completely. A woman contacted her, a woman from the neighboring district, older, who had known Edna Troyer before Edna moved away to live with her daughters, family in Indiana. This woman, whose name was Clara Hirschberger, had kept something Edna had asked her to keep, a written account of the concern Edna brought to the deacon in that long ago winter, a document she had put into Clara's hands in case it was ever needed. Clara found Sarah through a series of careful connections, the kind that happen between people who have been quietly waiting for the right time. She gave Sarah the document. I did not know any of this. I was home in our district, working through the motions of the year, writing letters to my daughter that she answered carefully and without much detail. I missed her. I told myself it was her choice. I told myself she would find her way back. Daniel became ill in Sarah's 2nd year away. A heart condition, the English doctor said. He was 58 years old and still physically strong in most ways. But the illness changed the atmosphere in the house. It quieted him. It made him smaller. I found myself tending to him with a genuine care that confused me, loving the diminished version of him more easily than I had ever managed to love the full-sized one. He died in November of that year, 2 weeks before Sarah would have come home to see him. She came home for the burial. She stood beside me. She held my hand. Whatever she had learned from Clara's document, she kept it inside her during those days, and I was grateful for her steadiness without understanding its cost. She stayed 2 months after the burial. We lived carefully around each other. I felt the distance that I had helped build, and I mourned it. And I still did not ask the question I should have asked. I still could not bring myself to say, "Sarah, what do you know that I don't? What have I been wrong about?" She left again in January. She wrote that she was well, that she was working, that she was thinking. She did not say thinking about what. It was in March of that year that Bishop Levi came to my door. He was the second bishop in my adult life. Careful man in his early 60s, fair in his way, not the kind who enjoyed wielding authority for its own sake. He sat at my table and he drank the tea I offered, and he was quiet for a while before he spoke. He said that he had been made aware of certain information, that it concerned events from many years ago, that he believed, after much prayer, that a wrong had been done, and that the person most responsible for that wrong had passed, but that a secondary harm had been caused, a harm of silence, of concealment, choosing protection over truth, and that harm had been caused by me. I sat very still while he spoke. He told me what Edna had seen. He told me what Daniel had done to have her concern dismissed. He told me that the 3 nights Sarah had spent at the Zook farm had not been arranged because I was ill. They had been arranged because Daniel had told the Zooks I was struggling emotionally, that I was unstable, and that the children needed to be away from the house. He had used those 3 nights in a way that Edna had suspected but could not prove a way. That involved another family's property, a transaction, a document I had never been shown, a decision that affected the financial future of our farm, and had been made in my name without my knowledge. Sarah had not been removed from the house for my sake. She had been removed so that I would not ask questions, and Edna had seen the beginning of it, had suspected enough to ask Sarah careful questions, had tried to bring that concern forward, and Daniel had cut her off before she reached me. The stone I had carried in my chest for 16 years cracked open, and underneath it was something much older and much heavier. Bishop Levi said that he believed I had not known, but he also said that I had been given a warning, through Sarah, all those years ago. Thee and I had accepted Daniel's explanation without pressing, that Sarah had asked me directly at 16. Thee and I had lied to protect a peace that was not peace, that my silence, however understandable its roots, had left my daughter to carry a truth alone that she should never have had to carry alone. He said that the community had a practice for situations like this one, that if I was willing, a public apology, made before the congregation with Sarah present, was the way the community knew how to restore what had been broken between 2 of its members. He said I was not required. He said it was my choice. I looked at my hands on the table. I thought of Sarah watching me from doorways when she was small. I thought of her asking me at 16 and the lie I had offered her instead of the truth. I thought of all the times I had smoothed things, softened things, folded things carefully so I would not have to look at them directly. Tell me the day, I said. Sarah came back for the members' meeting. She came back because Bishop Levi had asked her, and because she agreed to stand in that room and let whatever was going to happen happen. I did not speak to her the night before. She stayed with a family across the road, and I lay awake in the house where I had lived for 22 years, and I thought about what a mother owes a daughter, not protection from truth. That was what I had given her, and it was not a gift. What she was owed was the truth itself, offered clearly and without excuse, in a place where it could be witnessed. I stood at the front of that room. Thee and Bishop Levi stepped back, and the congregation was very quiet. Sarah was in the second row. She was looking at the window. I said her name, and she turned. I said, I was given a warning when you were 7 years old, and I accepted a lie instead of protecting you from it. I was given another chance when you were 16, and I told you the lie myself. I had reasons for everything I did. The reasons were real. But they do not change what you were left to carry alone, and what I should have carried with you, I said. I am sorry, Sarah. Not because I was ordered to be, because I understand finally what I owed you. The room held its breath. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she gave one small nod. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgment. The acknowledgment that she had been seen. That what had been done to her had been named in the place where it mattered most. It was enough. Not everything, but enough. That was 4 years ago. Sarah did not return to the district to live, and I did not expect her to. She visits 3 or 4 times a year. She stays 2 or 3 nights. We sit at the kitchen table and drink tea and talk about ordinary things. Her work, her friends, the small details of the life she has built outside these roads. We do not yet talk easily about the years in between. Maybe we will. Maybe the ordinary visits are themselves the repair, done slowly, the way a field is worked back to health after a long drought. I still attend the same church, I still sit in the same row. Some of the women treat me the same as they always did. Some are more careful now, and I understand that too. The document Edna Troyer wrote is in a box in my closet. Clara Hirschberger gave it to me after the members' meeting. Said she had been keeping it long enough. I have read it twice. Both times I cried. Not for myself, but for Edna, who tried. And for the 7-year-old girl who told me something. And for the 16-year-old who tried again. And for the woman who had to go looking for the truth that her own mother should have handed her long before. I keep the document because I think there should be evidence, somewhere, that these things happened. That someone noticed. That someone tried. The silence was not unanimous. There is a small iron hook beside my front door where I have always hung my bonnet when I come inside. Sarah hung her coat on it once as a child, and I told her that hook was only for bonnets. She gave me that steady look of hers and moved her coat without argument. Last autumn, when she visited, she hung her coat on the hook before I could say anything. She looked at me, waiting. I let it stay. It is a small thing. Some repairs are made from nothing but small things, offered and accepted, one at a time, until there are enough of them to stand on.